Okay, eventually this is going to be a video about a prototype that I'm building for compressed air, but the invention has a couple of assumptions made here that I'm gleaning from some ancient carvings at a temple in Dendara, Egypt. Believe it's a temple of Isis. A lot of people have seen these figures, and they're calling them ancient alien light bulbs. But my impression of them is that these are actually air tanks. These are compressed air tanks, and this is actually a system of like a bellows, not insulators for electricity, but a bellows system that goes up and down, and these layers collapse into each other, okay, and compressed air down through some canals or chambers built into the pyramid or whatnot, and then back up through a tube and back up into this air tank. This is an air tank, and this is actually a symbol. This is a symbol for air coming into the tank, I believe, so that when he lifts this end up, all of the weight gets focused downward and into this stacked bellows system and compresses it, and then when he sets it back down again, the air actually pushes the bellows back up. So and these figures are all doing work. That's why I said this is not a light bulb. Okay, and over here we have what I believe is a shutoff valve. You see a notch in a block here, and this is probably hinged at the back. And this guy leans forward, and it actually pinches off this hose that's leading up into the air tanks. Okay, so what's significant about this is that the more air that gets compressed into these tanks, the heavier these tanks get. Okay, because compressed air actually has a little bit of weight to it. So every single gyration, every time they pump into this, the tank gets heavier and heavier, and they're using the weight of the storage itself to pump higher and higher pressures of air. So theoretically, it would be the same amount of energy, even though they're getting higher and higher pressures. It's the same amount of work having to be done per stroke. Okay, now that's the first assumption that I'm making with part of my designs. Now, oops, these are a little bit out of order, sorry. This is the another drawing from the temple at Dendara. And I see this as a rocking mechanism and also a compressed air system. You see, it's just a half circle with all these chambers, concentric circled chambers. Let's back up here a little bit. Embedded into this mechanism, this rocking mechanism, and here we have these pistons. I call them up on top. Two on each side, and this rocks back and forth, I believe. And up here, if this was a manifold along the top, you have these chambers. It's like a cup inside of a cup. And here, actually, this a closer up picture of these piston heads, I call them. They're actually heads. You can see that there's like a membrane, some sort of like a flexible membrane. Maybe it was a goat bladder or something, you know, but you see these cups, the cup inside of a cup, upside down cup here, inside of a larger cup here, and you can actually see coiled almost springs, it looks like, so that as it rocks one way, it pushes up on this intake head, and air pushes up and pushes the cup up in the air. The inner cup pushes up into the air. The air escapes around the outside and goes out through the top. And you can actually see it in little pulses of air like they're depicting here. And over here on the side is a compressed air tank. What I believe it is. So this thing just rocks back and forth, and there's just this little bit of distance rocking up and down here pushes air into each one of these, and they're all being combined together into this one compressed air tank. And what I think what is significant about these channels, these concentric circled channels, is I believe this was filled with fluids. And what happens is it's tipped up on one end. There's a density. It's right now the way it sits here. The highest density would be in the center of fluids. But if you tilted it one way, that density would shift to one side, and then when you let go of it and bounce, it would actually bounce in a wave pattern back and forth, and it would take very little bit of energy to rock this thing back and forth and compress air out through the top. Now, I've come up with a design of my own where it uses these concentric channels for water tubes, but instead of putting the tank along the holding tank off to the side, I put two separate air tanks inside of a drum to complete this bottom semicircle down here. I complete it into a drum and put two compressed air tanks in. So we're, instead of the pistons on top of these each end, I put the pistons out on the outside and down to the ground. So as it rocks back and forth, you take the air is this one is the air is pumping into this one as it rocks one way. You take the air from this one and pump it into the opposite side tank over here, so it gains a little bit of weight. So as that's pressing down that way, it's adding a little bit of weight over on this side for the return trip to help, and it goes back and forth thusly. So that's the whole schematic diagram for it, and then I'll show you the guts of the actual invention itself. I just needed this one to give the idea of where I'm getting all my theories from. Okay, that's it.